My name is Theodore Sofos, and today I'm going to be talking about carbon nanotubes. So, what are carbon nanotubes? They're essentially rolled sheets of graphene. They make up an entire single molecule of all carbon atoms. It's essentially an allotrope of carbon. It makes up a hexagonal lattice that's rolled. We have two types over here, single-walled and multi-walled. Fullerenes, which is the class of chemicals that nanotubes belong to, were first discovered in 1985, but nanotubes weren't discovered until 1991. They were discovered using a technique called arc discharge. The diameter of them ranges from 0.4 nanometers to tens of nanometers, which could be up to 100. The length can be up to 1 millimeter, which gives an incredibly high aspect ratio, typically about 10 to the third. The structure involves an off-domain pi conjugated system of electrons, making it highly stable and highly conductive. So we have two types of carbon nanotubes, one being single-walled and the other being multi-walled. Single-walled are going to have smaller diameters of 0.4 to 2.5 nanometers, but multi-walled can have diameters of up to 100 nanometers. They have different uses for practicality, as single-walled work better in optical and electrical applications, as they can be more pure. They can be used in sensors, electronics, photodetectors, but they are harder to produce on their own in a pure form. Multi-walled carbon nanotubes are easier to produce in bulk, and they're generally used for their mechanical strength, thermal properties, and as electrodes. So we have three main types of synthesis, or three main methods. They are arc discharge, laser ablation, and chemical vapor deposition. Chemical vapor deposition is the most useful, especially for bulk production. So the first method I'm going to talk about is arc discharge method. The arc discharge method uses a high temperature plasma to basically vaporize the carbon atoms into a plasma. These form both multi and single-walled carbon nanotubes. It doesn't need a catalytic agent, but for the preparation of individual single-walled nanotubes, one is needed, such as transition metal. So these two electrodes are going to create a plasma. One is going to be made of graphite, and this heats up, vaporizes, and then deposits on many different surfaces inside the reactor. And a constant gap between the electrodes is kept to keep the plasma formation. There's going to be some hard deposits on the cathode. These contain multi-walled carbon nanotubes, and then along with many other byproducts, especially when no catalyst is present. There's also going to be a rubbery soot on the reactor walls, which also contain some carbon nanotubes. But when a catalyst is present, the soot will contain multi-walled and single-walled nanotubes. So the next method is going to be the laser ablation method, where lasers are pulsed against graphite interface, and it's kind of etched off and vaporized in layers. And this also vaporizes carbon atoms, which then form into nanotubes and cool and settle on a collector here. This method favors the growth of single-walled carbon nanotubes, and the graphite must contain a metal catalyst for this to work. And the product you get from this is going to depend on the catalyst type, its ratio to the graphite, type of inert gas, and the temperature of the reaction furnace. And then the next method is going to be the chemical vapor deposition method, where again it vaporizes a carbon-based feedstock. This could be carbon monoxide or hydrocarbon, and then it flows along the substrate with a catalyst, and the carbon nanotubes start to form on the metal catalyst sites. The characteristics of the nanotubes produced by this method are largely dependent on the conditions, such as the temperature, operation pressure, the volume and concentration of hydrocarbons, the nature, size, and pretreatment of metal catalysts, and the reaction time. This method also produced both single-walled and multi-walled carbon nanotubes, but some method prefers one over the other. Then we have chirality of carbon nanotubes. The nanotubes use a unique chirality index, NMM. It essentially measures the twist in the nanotube. So if we wanted to measure this, we would count the spaces here and then count the spaces going up, and that would give us a idea of the chirality. There's going to be three main types: armchair, zigzag, and chiral. Here's what armchair looks like, here's zigzag, and here's chiral. Zigzag, you can see the bonds line up with the axial direction of the tube. Armchair, they're parallel to that. Armchair is going to always be metallic with its properties. Zigzag can have both metallic or semiconducting. Chiral is going to be mostly semiconducting. Now we're going to get into some of the mechanical properties. Carbon nanotubes have exceptionally high strength and tensile strength, Young's modulus, and elasticity. They have higher tensile strength and Young's moduluses over many other different structural substances. They also have very low density. They also have very high electrical conductivity. The chirality affects this, and they also have a very large thermal conductivity range, as both of these properties are anisotropic, which means they only happen in one direction. Semiconducting single-walled carbon nanotubes are the only photoluminescent ones, but this can be modulated with functionalization with different chemicals attached to them. And some of the applications are glucose sensing, dopamine sensing, and water purification. And here's an example of functionalized single-walled nanotubes. It changes its response in your infrared photoluminescence. So in conclusion, there's many unknown or unfound uses for carbon nanotubes. There's still a lot of research to be done. We don't know how to purify them based on chirality beyond a lab scale yet, so that's something research will have to focus on. Then I do have a 3D model. This is what it's going to look like on a microscopic scale. That's going to be it. Thanks for watching.